Good morning. Good morning. It's Transformational Tuesday. Good morning. Transformational Tuesday. I hope you guys are excited about today's conversation. We're talking about triggers today, you guys. Our um, self, triggers around our self awareness, you guys. What is stopping us from becoming self aware? Good morning. Good morning, you guys. Just waiting to come on in the group. Good morning. Triggers around our self awareness, you guys. What is stopping us? What is stopping us? What is triggering us about our self awareness? I'm excited about this conversation. I love talking about triggers. Um, because like especially around this topic of self awareness, because I think that once we become aware of our triggers, you guys, we will really, really, really start to transform and reshape our life in a way. And as long as we understand that triggers are not to be judged, they're truly a space where we find out how to heal. Okay, so Transformational Tuesday, stop ignoring your triggers and start understanding what's holding you back. Good morning. Good morning. Before we start, we already know, as I welcome you back to Project Life, where we turn theory into practice. Um, I want to really get us to start breathing, right? Good morning. Good morning, Shamika. Right. So let's take our deep breath this morning, right? Let's get centered, right? This is our time, right? No judgment, no, no judgment, just our presence, right? We've already taken care of the things that we needed to take care of this morning. And now we're going to join as a community, right? To really get fed. And so we can really go about the rest of our day. Good morning, brother. Good morning, Tanisha. Good morning, Miss Delana. Okay, so I just want to welcome you back to Project Life. You know, yesterday we uncovered the stories we tell ourselves, right? Those stories, um, good morning, Byron. Um, the stories we tell ourselves, right? Those deep seated stories or beliefs that have shaped our actions, you guys, that have shaped our confidence, right? In our mindsets, right? But have you ever noticed that some situations, some people, and some emotions seem to bring those stories roaring back into our life? Good morning, Cousin Gladys, right? That's not an accident, you guys. That is what we call a trigger, right? So today we're talking about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, you guys. A lot of people uncomfortable seeing themselves fully, right? That is what we're going to talk about. Really seeing ourselves fully, you guys, and believe it. Believe me, it's comfortable to really look uncomfortable sometimes to really look at ourselves, right? Not just physically, right? Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, guys. We're going to take a look at ourselves. All right. So, who this session is for? All right. Um, this session is for you if you feel easily thrown off by certain situations or people, right? Do certain comments, certain actions, or experience instantly make you feel like insecure, angry, defensive, even when you don't know why? Right? Do you keep repeating emotional reactions that you don't like, right? Do you keep repeating the same emotional reactions that you really don't like to feel, right? You promise yourself that you won't overreact, shut down, or avoid conflict. But when that trigger hits you, you guys, you just feel powerless to stop it, right? If that's something you experienced, then this session is for you. All right. You feel stuck in a past wound, you guys. If certain words or situations bring up old pain, like feeling ignored, feeling rejected, a fear of abandonment, right? Criticize. This session will help you understand why. All right. You struggle with overthinking, right? Do small interactions send you on this spiral of self doubt, fear, replaying a conversation in your mind over and over again, talking to people about that conversation? Good morning, Sharon, right? Your triggers may be fueling this cycle. Good morning, Dale. All right. You're tired of feeling emotionally drained, you guys. If you're tired of feeling emotionally drained, then this session is for you, because if small things ruin your whole mood or energy, then this session will help you from reacting emotionally to really responding from wisdom and confidence, you guys. If this sounds familiar, all right, this Transformational Tuesday conversation is for you, because once you understand your triggers, you guys, they lose their power over you. They lose their power over you, okay? And that's when real transformation truly begins, all right? Um, but before we actually get in the conversation, can you drop me one word in the chat, right? Just put one word in the chat and let me know how you feeling this morning. I am feeling great. So my word would be grateful, right? Grateful. This month, we're talking about how to shape your life. In this week, we're really talking about self-awareness. And this is one of my favorite things to talk about outside of relationships, because self-awareness is truly an important component to our growth and our evolution, right? And it's scary, right? Because you got to go on the longest journey that you will ever go through in your life, which is from one ear, right, through one ear and out the other, which is the journey through your mind. And all these thoughts, some of them are not yours, all these beliefs and all these stories, right? So Tamisha said blessed. Byron said lively. Dale said valley. Right. The valley of the mind. Right. Right. Okay. So triggers are signals, you guys. This is what I want to just step back and I just want to say triggers are signals. All right. They reveal where healing needs to happen, you guys. That's what they are. That's why I added it to the Stop It Now framework, because I think once we can understand something differently, we can possibly accept it differently. And we've always attached triggers to like trauma, right? To this bad thing that has happened. But we can be triggered to do good things, right? Latoya said hopeful. Cousin Gladys said blessed, right? So we can be triggered to do great things. We can be triggered to do not so great things, right? The trigger is just the mechanism of what is going off, what is firing and wiring when something happens, right? So when if this happens, then that happens. It's really like a cause and effect type of thing, and we have more control over it than what we think. All right. So triggers are signals. They really reveal where healing needs to happen. Okay. But most of us don't recognize our triggers. We just react to them, you guys. Many of us avoid looking too deeply into ourselves because we're really afraid. We're really afraid of what we might find. But true growth, you guys, true growth, living in integrity, true peace on the inside really requires us to be honest. It really does. It really requires us to be honest. And I think we fear honesty because it's like, if I'm truthful about that, then what does that mean? And it just means that more alignment is going to come. All right, more alignment for you. Now, we do know that honesty may not be the easiest thing to do, right? It may not be the easiest, but it's necessary, you guys. It's necessary for our own elevation. All right. Because you can't fix what you won't face. You guys, you can't fix what you won't face. So today we stop ignoring our triggers, you guys, and start really understanding them. Because when we identify our triggers, right? When we can identify our triggers, we take back control of our emotions, and then we're able to rewrite the story that has been holding us back, right? That has been holding us back. Good morning, Miss Angela. Good morning, Angela. All right. So today we're stopping. We are stopping ignoring our triggers. We stop ignoring our triggers, and we really start to understand them. All right. So let's do our quote to really kick off our session. So today's quote is, "When we are triggered," this is by Dr. Nicole LaPere. Right. Okay. So when we are triggered, you guys, we are being invited to heal. I love this quote. Okay. So when we are triggered, we are being invited to heal. It's kind of like we're coming into this intersection in the street. I'm triggered. I can either make a left, and I've always made a left, or I can explore what does going right look like? What if I responded differently? What if I pause, right? And then I wanted to add this second trigger, the second verse or quote, because I thought it was good. The privilege of a lifetime is to become truly who you are, you guys. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. All right, that's by Carl Jung. Now, listen, I added that second one because I do think that if triggers are an invitation for us to heal, right? So we have in some way had an issue. The trigger is there to heal us, right? And then once we can heal, then we can expand and grow, right? And that's the biggest privilege, right? Because then we can become, right? We can become who we were truly meant to be. All right. And sometimes these triggers going left, going left, going left is stopping us. And we like, why? Why can't I have the life I want? Why is things keep happening? Why? And a big part of that, right, is because we are allowing the trigger to automate our thoughts. All right. So triggers aren't random, you guys. They're reminders, right? They expose the unhealed parts of us, you guys. They really do, right? They in particular to this conversation, like I said earlier, trigger is anything, right? It's this kind of it's a cause and effect thing. But the triggers that specific to today, these triggers really can expose the unhealed part of us. All right, the parts still tied to the old stories and our old beliefs, right? The question is, will you keep reacting, right? Or will you start healing and expanding? And remember, I said that, everybody is not on a healing journey. Some of us are okay with our past, right? Some of us are truly like, hey, that happened. I laid that to rest, but I still feel stuck, or I'm still going through these challenges. And a lot of times it's because you're trying to expand now, right? You're trying to grow your territory. You're trying to learn. You're trying to become everything that you were created to be, or some of what you were created to be. And in that expansion, you guys, which has nothing to do with your background, be it good, be it challenging, be it in a different background, right? It really has a lot to do with I'm really trying to change the trajectory of my experience and really expand. And that can be triggering. Okay. All right. So let's talk about Jasmine, right? Jasmine, she always believed she wasn't good enough, you guys, right? She worked hard. But every time she got constructive feedback, she felt worthless. She felt judged. She felt inadequate. It wasn't the words though, you guys. It was the trigger. The criticism that she would get, the constructive feedback that she would get, right? This criticism reminded her of growing up in a home where she felt, where she only felt that she needed to be perfect, you guys, right? And so when she would receive constructive criticism as an adult, she felt this inadequacy because she grew up in a home where you had to be perfect, right? And one day she asked herself, why does this affect me so much, right? What is this really about? Okay. That's when everything changed for her. Right? She understood that she was being triggered and she started reacting in defense and really started responding with awareness. You guys, this is so important. I love her story because I remember, her just wanting to be right. Her just wanting to be right. Like she really had this mindset that things had to be done perfect, right, for them to be right. And as adults, you guys, don't please don't shrug when I say this, but we don't have really enough information to be right or be wrong. We know that there's one truth, right? There's a truth, what's up and down and left and right, right? But we have perspectives of a truth, all right? Because we all experience things differently. So when we fall into this, what's good and what's bad, what's good behavior and what's bad behavior, what's right and what's wrong. Well, what's right for one person may not be right for you. That's based on a person's value system. Okay. And we have to give ourselves freedom to value the things that we value and then allow other people to value the things that they value. And it's going up in my spirit. Let me explain this a little bit more. When I say your value system, some people value love. Some people value security. some people value family, right? So if you have a person that values security, they're going to be more maybe steadfast with their resources, right? They're going to be more protective, right? But if you love family, then you may, if you value family, then you may be a person that gives your resources to family, right? And if you're with a person that values money or values security, then um, they may be challenged by that. Like, why are you keep giving our support away? That person doesn't need our help, right? But because you value family, you like, I just feel bad if if my sister's struggling or my cousin's struggling and I can't help her. You guys, those are different value systems. And that doesn't mean that you helping your family is right or wrong, or this person feeling wanting security is right or wrong. It just means that you guys value different things. And that's why truth is truly a perspective, right? And when we can know what we value, and then if we're in relationships, we can understand what they value, then that lends a space where we can have more compassion for one another and more compassion for ourselves. And so with Jasmine, she valued perfectionism, right? Perfectionism is stressful. Byron said perfectionism is stressful. We have to remember to show ourselves grace. Absolutely, right? But when we grow up with that narrative right in the back of our head, now our supervisor comes in, we turn in a project, right? Or we clean up or we cook or do something, just anything, right? That we feel like we stressed about, because perfectionism will cause us to be anxious and right procrastinate and a lot of other things, right? Because we want to get it perfect. And so now let's say the supervisor comes and says, I really like this, but I need you to change this and I need this to happen, right? Now you feel defensive, like, well, why do I need to change that? And we will create a narrative about that supervisor. Oh, they're a stickler. Oh, they're always on my back or whatever, just to preserve, right, our perfectionism, right? And so with working with Jasmine, we were able to say, what is it, right? Why do you feel so defensive? Is this person even trying to come after you, right? And what she realized was that she was being triggered, right? It was triggering this space of being perfect, all right? So I want you to know that your triggers don't control you. They actually teach you if you're willing to listen, you guys. They actually can be your biggest teacher if you're willing to listen, all right? Because Marcus never ever looked in the mirror for a long time. He also never journaled. He never had deep conversations, anything that made him question his choices, right? So he never looked at the mirror. He never journaled. He never had deep conversations, and anything that made him question his choices. Why? Because he was afraid, you guys. He was afraid of what he might see. All right. But the truth is, avoidance, you guys, avoidance only delays the transformation that we seek, you guys. It only delays the transformation that we seek. So when Marcus and I started to work together, he finally stopped running. He stopped running and started getting honest about his fears, you guys, his patterns, right? And then we were able to like tap into his potential. And then everything in his life really started to shift, right? Because he could face himself, right? Embrace his flaws and really step fully into his power. Okay. Because self-awareness is required, you guys, for us to be courageous. All right. The most honest, the more honest you are, with yourself, the more powerful you become. Okay. The more honest we are with ourselves, it's kind of like we're harnessing our power back, right? So, so Byron said, avoidance only delays. Amen. Amen. Amen, Byron. Okay. Okay. So yesterday, we identified the limited stories that we tell ourselves. All right. And today we're looking at triggers, what triggers those stories and keep them alive. All right. And we know that the T is in the stop it framework, right? And so we're not being triggered by the event, right? We're being triggered by the story we're telling ourselves about the event. That's the first thing. So we have a story, and now that story is triggering. This week is about self awareness because I really think we have put a lot of power in the conditions, the circumstances, the experiences outside of us, right? And we're pointing the finger there because we haven't become aware of the story, you guys, that we're telling ourselves about the events that's happening in our life, about the people that's happening in our life, because it's happening so quick. It's happening so quick that, you just believe that that person is a-hole, or you just believe that life is what it is because because it's triggering so fast for you. And so this week is about really stepping back and thinking, what is my story about a specific situation, and really how is that story triggering me, and how even becoming more self-aware can be triggering. All right, because we do have a story about our self-awareness in itself, okay? Which is why we're probably not as self-aware, right? They'll say, yep. So let's talk about a trigger. A trigger: a coworker gets praised, and you suddenly feel invisible, right? So when you see someone else get attention, or you see someone else get praised, and then you suddenly feel invisible, right? The old story is, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. Why? Because maybe I caught a story when I was younger, right? That other people were better than me, or I experienced a favoritism, if we want to call it that, where everybody paid attention to everybody else, but I felt invisible in my family, even though I was the family member that helped out the most, that did the most. I felt used and taken over. See, that's a narrative that we caught from when we were little, and now that we're older, guess what? I'm in a room of people who didn't grow up in my home, but I'm still feeling like that kid again, that I'm not good enough. All right. When I see my colleagues being praised. All right. All right. Someone gives you feedback and you instantly feel attacked. This is another one, you guys. The old story under this could be, I'm always messing things up. I can never get it right. I'm not smart enough. Right. So again, someone giving you feedback and you instantly feel attacked, maybe because you got judged a lot when you were younger, right? Or in a relationship. And when I say younger, we can say all the way up to 25, really, until your frontal lobe closes, right? You got in a relationship, and so now you feel like you have to defend yourself, right? So any feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, you can feel your body tense up, right? And a lot of times this is really because you have this old story in your mind, like, I'm always messing things up, or I need to get things right, or something like that, right? So an old story, you get ignored in a conversation and you shut down. This is a big one, right? And the old story under this could be, no one values what I have to say, right? So you're getting ignored in a conversation and you instantly shut down. And I have to tell people, listening is a gift that everybody don't have. And a lot of times people are not trying to talk over you. They're just trying to speak their mind too, right? And because we haven't learned how to effectively communicate, how to really sit with our words, how to really do that, a person is not shutting you down. They're just responding to the conversation that's happening in their head. And so they're triggered to just say it, right? But a lot of times people feel ignored. Right, they feel like they're being ignored in a conversation or not being heard. And another thing that I'm going to kind of branch off with, if somebody say, I'm listening, right, I heard you, I'm listening and I heard you, does not equate to, now I'm going to do the thing you want me to do. And I think that we feel like if a person says, I hear you, then that means that they should follow your instruction. And those are two different things, right? I can hear you and I can agree to disagree. I can hear you and not do the thing that you are talking about. And that doesn't mean I didn't hear you. But somewhere in our mind, and again, I could say we caught it from kids. When your parents say, did you hear me? You like, yeah. And what did you do? You went and did a thing, right? Go wash them dishes. Did you hear me? Yep. And what you do, you go wash the dishes, right? So a lot of times we are looking, when we ask a person, did you hear me? It is in some way we're implying, so now do what I told you to do. And as adults, you guys, we have to give people the autonomy to do what they want to do, right? Because guess what? We want the autonomy to do what we want to do. All right. So you get ignored in a conversation and you shut down really has nothing to do with the other person, right? This may bring up a story or a narrative that no one really values what I have to say. right? And if you caught that story along the way, then you may shut down. And somebody like, what's wrong? You need something? Nope, I'm good. And guess what? Now you've gotten the opportunity to say exactly what it is that you need to say, but you've so far removed from the conversation now, right? You're so far removed from the conversation that now you're not going to take that space because you've been triggered. All right. So your actions aren't random, you guys. These are rooted really in old wounds, old behaviors, old habits, old beliefs. All right. But once you can see the pattern, you guys, you can break free from them. All right. Good morning, cousin Debbie. Shamika said, right. Latoya said, good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So listen, triggers aren't the problem, you guys. Triggers are not the problem. How you respond to them really determines your power. Okay. What this means is that when something triggers you, it's an invitation to pause and ask, what is this reminding me of? Right? Imagine no longer spiraling when something sets you off. Instead, you take a deep breath and you respond with power and authority that the present moment offers you. All right. One of the members, right, shared that I used to feel invisible in meetings. Every time someone talked to me, I would shut down. But when I realized my triggers was linked to a childhood, I started speaking up with confidence instead of shrinking back. Okay. Listen, when people studies show that when people recognize their emotional triggers, you guys, their levels actually decrease, and they gain better control over their reactions. Listen, avoidance doesn't erase reality. It doesn't erase reality, you guys. It just postpones our growth. All right. And if you want to step into your full potential, right? If you want to step into your full potential, and again, just experience something different, right? Maybe you feel like you're on a hamster wheel and you keep, like Groundhog Day, like you keep experiencing the same thing over and over again, right? You must be willing to take a look at yourself a little closely and truly be honest. All right. So imagine what life would look like if you fully accepted yourself, flaws, strengths, and all. Listen, the more you embrace yourself, really, the less the less power fear has over you. Right? The more you embrace yourself, you guys, the less power fear has over you. Okay? One of my clients literally spent years, I'm sorry, spent years running from her emotions, right? And that's what she actually said. I spent years running from my emotions, but once I started acknowledging them, I finally felt free, right? So journaling and self-reflecting, right? Research shows that this really increases our emotional intelligence, our decision making, and our mental well-being, right? So I want you to drop a light bulb or a heart in the chat, right? If you're really ready to take control of your triggers instead of letting them control you, you guys. So drop a heart in the chat for me. All right. As we move on to our biblical wisdom. Thank you. All right. So our biblical wisdom today, remember we use biblical verses. We use a principle verse as just a guiding verse for us, right? And then we use a promise, right? We use a promise verse. Why do we use promise verses? I'm gonna tell you this. I'm 46 years old. I grew up in a whole lot of different churches. I did. But when I realized that the Bible was not just a book about religion, you guys, it was a book about principles, about parables, about promises, right? And patterns, I was way more intrigued when I saw the story because I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting, right? And I didn't have to look at it through a lens of religion. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't look at it like that. It just liberated me to really understand these stories and really accept these promises. And so when I went through a transformation in my life and I was unclear and stuck and really didn't have the thoughts for myself, guess what? Inserting a principle like as a man thinketh, so is he, right? oh, well, I need to change my thinking. I can hold on to that principle, right? And then understanding this promise, I love this promise. It says that as the rain falls from the clouds and goes back, falls to the ground and goes back to the heavens, so will my word, right? When it leaves my mouth, it will not come back to me unvoid. Do you know how powerful that was to me? I'm like, wait, so basically God said, I cannot lie. Like what I'm telling you is true. I think that's how that verse goes, and we're going to use it later on. But that was a promise for me. So in these daily intentions, I felt like, what's the best way to really create an impact, right? And it's truly because we have these principles and these promises as we choose to walk over this bridge, come from one island to the other. And we know change, right? It can be very scary. It can be very like, because the mind don't really want to change. So we're going to insert principle here, insert promise here so that we can really do these steps one step at a time and truly walk in faith, right? Walk in faith. When we can't see, we understand that the promise is there. All right. So for managing our emotions, okay, the principle is a person without self-control, you guys. A person without self-control is like a city with broken down walls. That's Proverbs 25 and 28. What does this mean? Triggers reveal where we need more self-awareness and more self-mastery, you guys. If you don't recognize your triggers, they will run your life. They will run your life, you guys. I have another principle verse, right? This is a good one. Proverbs 29 and 11. A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man, you guys, holds it back. A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. What does this mean? Wisdom is about really responding instead of reacting. When we understand your triggers, right? When we understand our triggers, we gain control over our emotions instead of just letting them dictate our actions, right? And direct and guide our conversations, right? The power is in your pause. The power is in your pause. Just because something triggered you, it doesn't mean you have to act on it. The first step is just to be aware that that triggered me. Oh yeah, that triggered me. And guess what? As you start to shift, maybe everything you want to say, you're going to say it in your mind, but you're going to like not let it happen out your lips, right? Right? Because it's a growth. So now you in your mind going in, right? You're seeing it, but you're teaching your mind that I don't have to say or respond to this trigger, but my body is still responding. But now that I am in control, I don't have to say that. But guess what I do have to do? I have to hear that. I have to feel that. And I'm training myself to do something different. All right. So this verse really reminds us that self-awareness leads to self-mastery, you guys. It leads to self-mastery. If you recognize your triggers and pause before reacting, you guys, you move from emotional chaos to clarity. Some of the stuff we're in is just because we've been triggered. And then we have this thing called an ego that's like, well, I said it. I said what I said, right? Yep, I know it hurt you, but that's really how I felt. Yeah, that is exactly how you felt based off the story that you told yourself about the situation. I just told you that that's not what I said, and that's not what I meant. But instead of you hearing me say, hey, I did not mean it. I did not mean it like that. I did not say it like that. You're going to hold on to your story so you can keep doing that trigger and so that you can feel comfortable in that behavior. If that makes sense, if you know somebody like that, if you've experienced that yourself, put a one in chat for me, right? Because a lot of us don't want to hear that. No, that's not what I meant. That's not what I said. You just made a story in your head, right? Nope, that's not what I meant. That's not what I said. You just made a story in your head. I think I'm a rapper now. I really do. Put a one in the chat if that makes sense. And so now you're trying to hold on, right? Hold on to the response, to the acting out, to the what the scripture said. You vent in full spirit, right? Right? You feel comfortable in that. All right. Now, this verse reminds us that self awareness really leads to self mastery. All right. What does this mean? This verse isn't about suppressing our emotions, you guys. It's not about suppressing, which a lot of us do. We've come to a point where we don't even feel, right? It's about mastering them, you guys. When we react impulsively to our triggers, we give away our power, you guys. True wisdom comes from pausing, learning. I want to say learning how to pause, reflecting, and choosing how to respond. Listen, I'm going to say this. This is a learning curve, you guys. This is not an easy thing. So when I say learning how to pause, that means sometimes you're going to be in the act of doing it and you're going to have a voice in your head like, oh, this is the thing. This is me being triggered. It's like you're having an out of body experience, but some way you cannot stop what you're about to say, but you'll become aware of it. And the more, oh, there I go again, right? Then now this small, still voice, now you hear it, right? And you're aware of it. And so then you're learning, right? And then the more you do it, you will eventually say, oh, you know what? I don't got to say it. And now you start to say it in your head. And then you do that for a minute, right? And when you're saying it in your head, guess what? You may not be paying attention to nothing the person is saying on the outside of you because you're listening so strongly to what you're saying on the inside. And then another learning curve where you don't hear that anymore because you mastered that trigger and now you're present on the outside, you guys. And I think that we think that I'm supposed to pause tomorrow. And I'm saying no. But we want to become self aware so we can understand when we need to pause, when we need to reflect, and when we need to choose. And a lot of times that's where getting help, like joining that growth membership, by getting a coach, right? By getting some of the higher end programs, right? Or getting a therapist or whatever it is you need so that you can have an anchor while you're on this learning curve, because learning don't happen overnight, you guys, right? So this verse reminds us that self-awareness is the key to self-control, you guys. And when something triggers us, whether it's a harsh comment, a difficult situation, or an old wound resurfacing, we have two choices, right? We act emotionally and feed into the cycle of frustration and pain, or we can recognize the trigger, we can pause, and we can decide how we're going to respond today. Okay? Because power comes from awareness. All right. And it comes with our awareness. And if we don't understand our triggers, you guys, they will control us. But when we take a step back and learn how to observe, when we learn how to take a step back and observe what's happening inside of us, you guys, we are really reclaiming our ability to respond wisely. All right. Um, and let me see. Yeah, so I do have another promise verse. You will keep in peace. I love this one. You will keep in peace. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. Listen, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they will trust in you. What does this mean? Triggers create chaos. Triggers create chaos. They stir up old pain, insecurities, and anxieties. Peace isn't about avoiding our triggers, you guys. It's about mastering our mindset. And when we center ourselves in trust instead of reacting emotionally, or when we center ourselves in truth, right, instead of reacting emotionally, we experience a deeper stability, right? So this verse really reminds us that we don't have to be at the mercy of our emotions, right? And when we learn to shift our mindsets and anchor ourselves in truth, guess what? We can walk through life with peace instead of stress. And when we have that, guess what? People have that for us. When we have that, guess what? People have that for us. All right. So, our principal verse, a fool gives full vent to his spirit. Listen, this verse isn't again telling us about anything about suppressing our emotions. In real application, this verse really provides us with the self-awareness, provides us with the information that self-awareness is the key to self-control. And when something triggers us, you guys, whether it's harsh comment or difficult situation or our own wound that's resurfacing, right? We have those two choices, right? Which is to react and feed the cycle of frustration, or to pause and decide what to do next. All right. And then you will keep in perfect peace with those whose minds are steadfast because they trust you. That's Isaiah 26:3, right? This doesn't mean that we will never ever feel triggered again, you guys. But when our thoughts are rooted in trust or in truth instead of fear, we won't be thrown off course so easily. And then we won't throw other people off either. Instead of letting a rude comment ruin our day, you guys, you remind yourself that my worth isn't based on their opinion. All right. Instead of reacting out of anger, you pause and ask, what is this really about? What is this really about? What am I being called to heal in me? All right. These verses really just remind us that we don't have to be at the mercy of our emotions, you guys. We do have to be in relationship with our emotions, but we don't have to be in in mercy of them. Okay. And when we learn to shift our mindsets and anchor ourselves, you guys, in truth, we can walk through life with peace, right? Instead of stress. Okay. If that made sense, drop a 2 in the chat for me. Drop a 2 in the chat for me. Okay. So now it's time for our transformational tools, you guys. Our transformational tools. And these twos are really just your application. How will you apply today's session, right? So if you have your workbook, you can take those out. If you don't, you can just get a notebook. Anybody who's in the growth membership has a workbook that they can write in. But this, you can just write it down. Okay, so step one, I want you to identify one thing that regularly triggers you. Write it down. What is that one thing that regularly triggers you? You know, okay? Ask yourself, what is this really reminding me of? Or who is this really reminding me of? Okay. And where did this start? Right. Every behavior has a progressive journey or a place of inception, right? Where did it start? Okay. Especially when we're living in the future or in the past, right? Those two spaces are truly only based off of a narrative because they're not true. History, the past is the past. We can't change it, right? But we can tell ourselves a story about it. The future, we don't know what that's going to be, right? So the only power we have is to tell ourselves a story about it. And a lot of times, because we are in that paradigm of either victim or duty, or because we're really dealing with a lot of shame and guilt, these lower vibrating emotions, or these very contracting emotions, I like to say, then guess what? Our stories are more doubt filled, right? They're more doubt filled. So we get anxious when we think about future events because we're thinking that we're going to experience something in the future that we don't desire, right? And so we have anxiety about that. And then we get depressed when we think about our past because we're talking about or we're telling ourselves a story about our past. That is what? That is one of that I didn't want to experience or that I didn't like. Okay. And so this is the power of stories because the truth is there's no such thing as there's really no past. I can't change it as it has happened. And there's really no future, right? There's only the present moment. And if I'm stored up in the present moment, telling myself stories, and I get the authority to tell myself a story about my past and about my future, then why not learn how to be the best playwright for me, for my life, right? And guess what? I know some of you said, but that's lying. I ain't gonna lie to myself, right? But guess what? It's all a lie. Right? Because guess what we don't realize is that your brain research shows that your brain never remembers the event, how it happened. So every story you've told yourself is a partial or as is a fraction or a perspective of the event that you experienced. That's why you can go to your mom and say, Mama, do you remember when I was little and I said this and then you said that and she like, girl, that no, I don't remember that. Or that is not what I said, right? Her story and your story don't match. Why? Because both of y'all have different perspectives about the same event that happened. Right? And so if we're going to tell ourselves a story in our now, right? In our now faith, right? I like Myron Golden say we have now faith, right? In our now faith, why not tell us a story of triumph? Listen, I was able to get over, right, these things in my past. I was able to get over a mother um, that wasn't present. I was able to get over molestation through, right, these domestic living in a domestic violent home, right? Because, and I know that I was able to get through it because I'm living here today, right? So that means that I persevere. I'm a victor over that situation, right? That's a story that you can tell about that, or we can tell ourselves a story that this happened to me, which is why I'm in this situation, right? And you will continue to be in that situation if you continue to tell that story, right? And that does not dishonor what happened to you, but we have a different way that we can see every event in our life, you guys. We can tell it from two perspectives. We can tell it from a victor, or we can tell it from a victim. And guess what? We have the free will to choose. But a lot of times, I remember I worked with a client and, we had this breakthrough and I saw it in his eyes. I saw it in his eyes. Like, man, I've been holding on to that story. And you know what he said? He was like, but if I change my story, Sheila, then all the acting out I did in my teenage years and all the people I hurt in my 20 years, it wouldn't make sense now. I don't know how I could forgive myself because the reason I acted out, the reason I was so angry and so bitter and so mad at my parents and, and did what I did in school was because that was the story I told myself as a kid and that fueled those behaviors. And so letting go of the story now gave space for him to evaluate these behaviors, right? And so then we had to work on giving him grace. Well, hey, you only knew what you knew until you knew something different. You just finding out today a different way to see that situation, right? And if you had that before, then you would have done something different, right? And so we can give ourselves grace. We can, forgive ourselves for acting out and all of those things that we did, right? From that mindset, because now I have new information. And now that I have new information, guess what I can do? I can behave differently. Right. And I thought that was a very much breakthrough situation for him. All right. So our affirmation, if that made sense, put a 3 in the chat for me. If that made sense, put a 3 in the chat for me. Because basically what I'm trying to say is a lot of us don't want to change our story because our story has brung us to the person that we are today. And if we sit at the table and we're willing to look at our parents different or that relationship different or that situation different, then now we have to take responsibility for all the actions that we took. And if the reason I've acted the way I've acted was because my mom was like that, or because my dad was like that, or because this man broke up with me, or because I got treated this way, right? If changing my story then now makes me responsible for those behaviors, then I would just rather keep the story, right? And that don't mean that, and I do believe that's why God said give us grace and really forgiveness, right? Because we do have to know that we only know what we know, you guys, until we know something different, right? And then when I learn something different, and sometimes that different thing I'm learning is the answer to my prayer. I'm tired of repeating the same thing over and over again. You meet somebody like Dr. Sheila Little, she says, hey, we can go back and tell yourself something different about that story so that you can experience something different in your future. That could be a partial answer to your prayer. And you're like, that wasn't it, right? That wasn't it. Or you picked up a book or you saw something on social media and it's like, because in your mind, you have a pathway of how you want to get there. And I'm just saying the stories that got you here, listen, they won't take you there. Okay. And all of us are trying to get to a there, whatever that there is, even if that's to later on today, a smile on our face, right? That's a there that we're trying to get to. All right. And a lot of times we're trying to have a better there, a better tomorrow, right? That's the there than we had today. And to do that, then we have to learn how to tell ourselves better stories. All right. And so a part of telling ourselves better stories is really telling ourselves these affirmations, right? Remember, if you don't believe it, believe the affirmation, then it's going to be very difficult for this to really manifest in your life. However, we can still take the language, right? We still can use the language to really look at our circumstances different. So today's affirmation, you could screenshot this. It says, I am aware of my triggers and I choose to respond with wisdom and confidence, right? Again, this is just pin it. Hey, I'm aware of my triggers and I choose to respond with wisdom and confidence. Remember, that's a learning curve, and that learning curve may happen for the rest of your life. Like I tell y'all, I got an 85-year-old grandma who still get triggered, right? We still working on her triggers. Hey, I know that triggered you, Granny. Okay. So this is not about the destination. It's about the journey, you guys, which is again why Project Life was here, why I show up every day, because it's in these small pieces, these small grains of sand, as we put them together, that creates what? The foundation, right? That solidifies our foundation in these small things, not this big, huge thing. All right. And then today's intention, the intention for the day, which is really just setting the tone for the day. Today, I pay attention to what triggers me, right? And I take back my power. Okay. Today, I pay attention to what triggers me and I take back my power. Because, listen, this is a difference between mental health and mental illness. As you guys know, I talk about this a lot. I love my family. My mom has a mental illness. My brother has a mental illness, schizophrenia, and bipolar, right? When I'm talking about triggers, we're not talking about mental illness, right? These very much chemical deficits in the brain, right? We're talking about life, right? We're talking about mental health, and really being aware of our mental health and our mental state and in our mindset, in our capacity, right? And these all have to do with our mental health, okay? And a lot of us don't have mental illness, you guys, but we do struggle with our mental health. We do struggle with our mental health. And a lot of times it's because we're not aware of these things that has affected our mental health, all right, in such a way that we could be on the way to a mental illness, right? Or because we've seen people who have not, taken care of their mental health, right, and ended up with a mental illness, right? And so we want to catch it, and we want to build it, and we want to grow it. And the way we do that is to become aware of our triggers, you guys. So today's intention is I pay attention to my triggers. I pay attention to what triggers me and I take back my power, you guys. And then our bonus challenge for today. Listen, for the next 24 hours, every time something triggers you, or whenever you become aware of it, right? Pause and ask yourself, what is this really about? Is this about this moment, or am I triggered to a past moment and now I'm responding to this present moment from a past event? All right. And if you want to come back and share that with me. Okay. All right. Remember, hey, go subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers. That is at I Am Shaping Solutions on YouTube. All right. If you like this conversation, invite a friend. Invite a friend to the group. It's Elevating Life with Sheila Little. All right. And remember that if this session really resonated with you, imagine, right? Imagine the possibility of what a deeper look into your life would be. And that's where that growth membership happens, where every Thursday we go into coaching labs and we really unhash what we talked about through the week. And that's where you can bring your personal questions and have those breakthroughs, you guys, because real transformation isn't about what you know. It's about what you do with what you know. And we know that that is called wisdom. All right. All right. If you was moved by this conversation, if it made sense, you know what to do. Drop a fire in the chat for me. Drop a fire in the chat for me. Hey, I love you guys. I love you guys. I thank you again for being here. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the obstacles that occur as a consequence of of self-awareness. I am ready for that conversation. Ready for that conversation. I love you guys. You continue to have an amazing day, and I will see you tomorrow. Till later.